Let's talk about parenting first. Too many millennials have grown up subject to what has been described as a failed parenting strategy. Too many of them were told as they were growing up that they were special, that they can have whatever they want just because they want it. They got medals for coming in last. They got participation medals, right? And the science on this is already good. We know that it devalues the feeling that somebody who works hard and comes in first place, and it actually makes the person who comes in last embarrassed because they know they don't deserve it. So it actually makes them feel worse. It actually doesn't help. There are a lot of kids who got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And they got A's not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents, right? Then those kids graduate and they start a job. And in an instant, they find out that they're not special, that you don't get anything just because you want it. You get nothing for coming in last, and your parents cannot help you get a promotion. And in an instant, their entire self-image is completely shattered. In an instant, the way they view themselves has completely changed, turned on its head. And so what you find is that there's an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. Remember, they have grown up in an Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat world in which they are very, very good at putting filters on everything. They're very, very good at curating how they want to be seen. And we think they're full of confidence. They seem to have all the answers. They seem to be telling us what to do. At the end of the day, it's just not there. It's just not true. It's just not true. Their confidence is a lot weaker than before. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know where they're going. They're unsure of themselves, and they lack the courage to ask. We say things like, my door is always open, assuming that they have the courage to walk through the door. Number one. Then we add in technology. There's a chemical in our body called dopamine. Dopamine is responsible for the feelings we get when we find something we're looking for or we accomplish something we set out to accomplish. You know that great feeling you get when you cross something off your to-do list, or when you win the game, when you hit the target, right? Win the client, get the promotion, whatever it is. That elation, find your keys. That elation comes from a chemical in our body called dopamine, right? Now, other substances, other things that release dopamine include alcohol, nicotine, gambling. That's what makes us feel good when we engage with those things, and it's the root of a lot of addiction. In fact, almost every alcoholic on the planet discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. You see, when we're very, very young, the only approval we need is approval from our parents. And then as we go through adolescence, we now crave the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the larger tribe. Very, very important, right? It's a time of high stress and high anxiety, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and the numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stress, and that becomes hardwired. And then for the rest of their lives, when they suffer some kind of extreme stress, they don't turn to a person, they turn to the bottle, right? Now, we also know that dopamine is released with cell phones and social media. So that bing, buzz, flash, and beep that we get from our phones that feels so good, it releases dopamine. We like getting it. Yes, we all hate all the emails, but we love the bing, right? We've all been in this position. You know, you're feeling a little bit down, you're feeling a little bit sorry, maybe feeling a little bit sad. And so what do? We send out 10 texts to 10 friends. Hi, 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 hi. And we hope that they write back because it feels good, right? So now we have a young generation with basically unfettered access to social media and cell phones. We have age restrictions on alcohol, we have age restrictions on smoking, and we have age restrictions on gambling. We have no age restrictions on this other dopamine-producing device called social media or cell phones. It's the equivalent of throwing open the liquor cabinet and telling our young adolescents, I know this is a stressful time, try the vodka, it'll get you through these hard times. That's basically what we're doing. And so what's happening is it's becoming hardwired, where our young generation isn't learning the coping skills and coping mechanisms to turn to another human being when they're struggling or stressed. They're turning to social media or their cell phones. Their self-worth sometimes becomes wrapped up in how many likes they get. They obsessively check how many likes, and actually will get depressed if they don't get any. You see them going out with their friends, and instead of connecting with their friends, they will simply sit and talk on the phone. Put it away, keep it away, because what it does is it actually hurts our ability to relate to each other. Now you look at young kids these days, they're on them all the time. I don't blame them, it is addiction. We yell and scream at them, but it's like yelling and screaming at an alcoholic. It doesn't help the fact that it's a chemical addiction, right? So you take an insecure generation that now, through no fault of their own, struggles to cope with stress. They don't know how to cope with and deal with stress. And as they have told me, many of them will admit that they struggle to form deep, meaningful relationships. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial, right? That their friends they know would cancel on them if they get a better plan, that they wouldn't really know who to talk to if they get depressed. And maybe they'll turn to an online support group, which is not a real thing. It's not human, right? And we've seen the impact of this. We're starting to see rises of depression in this generation. We're starting to see rise of suicide in this generation. We're starting to see a rise of accidental death due to drug overdose from this generation. The less extreme and more likely example is that someone will go through life just never really finding joy or fulfillment. And everything's just fine. How's your job? It's fine. How are your friends? They're fine. But no joy, because you just cannot, because joy, fulfillment comes from this. It comes from human interaction. We are social animals and we need it. And we have to learn to rely on our friends.